Greetings, adventurer, and welcome to Corepunk.
Simply described as an MMORPG with fog of war in a seamless open world, self-published by an in-house publisher named Artificial Core, a team headquartered in Amsterdam with a second core development office in Kiev, Ukraine, with early access slated for November 26th, 2024, and after several alpha test rounds that have had a bit of a shaky past, Corepunk is looking to finally enter the always playable market. Alpha testing of games can always be a little rough around the edges, and this game is no stranger, especially if you use the words alpha test as a sales tactic. Usually, that gets met with a boatload of scrutiny, and the folks over at Corepunk are no stranger to this. During Alpha 3, they got a lot of negative feedback surrounding the lack of progression, and in response, the developers ended up delaying the release of Alpha 4, which is now playable, until they had some more fleshed out core systems in place. A smart move, in my opinion. Although it isn't playable for anyone that would come along new that wants to play it, but more on that in a second. In fact, they were so worried that the game wouldn't have enough players or it would end up having empty servers that they admitted a few months ago they were hurting for testers. So they opened up the game for pre-order sales. And well, I suppose the game loop was compelling enough for people because the servers got bombarded with folks. And then back in September, they announced they had enough pre-orders to finish the development they needed before the early access launch in November and halted sales, which isn't something you commonly see. Most folks would tell you it's bad business to turn down pre-order money, but the folks at Artificial Core made what I would consider a commendable call. Let the game speak for itself when you're ready to show it to everyone, not just people that claim they'd be willing to fill out bug reports in some veiled attempt to just play something new. Okay, so as I had already mentioned, you can't get access to the playable alpha right now, so they have all the testers that they want. But if this game does tickle your fancy, the cost of entry on the 26th, when this game goes into early access, will be 36 USD, which there will be an easy to follow link in the description of the video that you can click on and go to the website and order if you end up liking any of what you see here. There are other packages. There is a $47 deluxe version, which is a helmet and a mana bike on top of the access. A helmet and a spider throne mount is available for 57 USD. And a $68 version is the Spider Throne and Mana Bike skins, the Ultimate Plus, along with access to the game and the helmet. You kind of get everything that is offered from the other two packages. Now, I should be clear that this doesn't give you a mount, it's just a skin for your mount. So it's just drip. That's basically it. No pay-to-win stuff here, okay? Even when the game experienced a massive dupe bug, the devs ended up leaving it in on purpose so that players could extensively test the endgame by saying, without the dupes, it would have taken 2 to 3 months for players to discover the possibilities of combining all the progression systems as a way for them to get good data. Now, all of those dupe bugs are now gone. At least they think they are. Maybe there's some more. Who knows? But anyway, fast forward to now, and I was asked by them to tell you or provide you all with a first look in my impression of the early game, and for full disclosure, I'm being paid to show you this first look, but that isn't going to deter me from giving you my honest impression. And there is some critique here. Level cap in Corepunk is currently set to 20, of which I managed to get to level 9, which sounds like I didn't spend all that much time, but I'll give you more context on that in a bit. So the majority of my first look for you all is going to be centralized around the earlier parts of the game. That being said, the most interesting thing about Corepunk is the variation. You build your character somewhat similar to that of a MOBA character, with systems similar to that of a League of Legends or a Dota, mixed with a little bit of what Dark and Darker wishes its multi-class system could be, and a dash of Last Epoch's ability augmentation system. I chose to play a Shaman, where for his melee hits every third strike he gets a stacking attack speed debuff. That's his core passive. Once at 5 stacks, it empowers each of his 3 abilities for an additional effect, either rooting an enemy in place, making a lightning cast instant, or giving me the ability to summon an elemental totem, the element of which I then get to choose by pressing T, choosing from either water, fire, or earth that give different on-placement effects. You can choose which of these abilities you'd like to level. If you want to be more caster-centric, you load up on leveling the lightning spell, or you can load up the totems to be stronger. The shaman's ultimate ability is a persistent wolf companion that you again get to choose to make the focus instead. So perhaps you'd like to be more of a beastmaster? All of these arcs end up in different places. Melee is about attack speed, spell power focuses on the lightning attack, etc. You collect items that you equip in addition to your armor and weapons, they call them augments, that further augment these things. You can focus on attack power augments for melee damage, spell power for spell damage and healing strength, health, mana, armor rating, or just about any other stat you can think you'd want to focus on. There are augments for all kinds of things. From there, you then have further choices in augmenting your skills, where you can add an extra charge to the lightning cast, or make the lightning chain to 3 more targets, or perhaps focus more on the melee side of things, which gives attack power and more attack speed, and the list goes on. And then there are subclass traits to focus on at levels 5, 10, and 15. For every level in between, you then get a point where you can choose to focus more on on crit strength or attack speed or being more tanky by borrowing aspects from the other classes in the game to more flesh out your character. And each level of those have choices insofar as when and how they benefit you. Do you gain movement speed, for instance, when you get a slow debuff, or do you get it when you have low hit points? Do you gain attack speed at the start of a fight for, say, 20 seconds, or do you gain it as a stacking buff on hit over time that lasts for 3 seconds? To be honest, the choices involved in how you can tailor a class in this game, at least on the surface, seems to be really well thought out and full of enough interesting progression choices to where I could see myself theory crafting both PvP-centric and PvE-centric builds, which would then vary depending on solo or party play for hours on end. From what I have read, again because I haven't been able to get to this point in my own gameplay as of yet, the devs are estimating around 300 hours of gameplay loop, what they refer to as quality content, which will also include instance dungeons both for solo and party play, entire biomes like a yet to be introduced but will be soon steps biome for the endgame, which will be primarily for group play and will offer endgame resources for killing area bosses, and a PvPve extraction instance that they are calling Dreadport, which rings similar to that of the Division's Dark Zone style of gameplay where you risk everything to see if you can get out with some endgame stuff. And yes, there are PvP ranks and a PvP-centric vendor that sells armor, recipes, weapons, and other gear. Okay, so impressions. From an artistry, aesthetic, and soundscape standpoint, the game absolutely nails it. This feels like a cyberpunk meets steampunk world, where you have a mix of locomotion as well as the attempted harnessing of magic, all intertwined. Almost like the animated show Arcane got mixed with Warcraft. Admittedly, I'm a total sucker for the type of artistry that was originally introduced to us on a large scale by Chris Metzen and World of Warcraft, and this game feels like if you decided you wanted WoW with a Warcraft 3's camera placement. There's solid directional audio cues where you can hear muffled sounds of enemies on the other side of trees and bushes that become more clear as you turn corners or get closer, and the fog of war element adds an additional layer of immersion in providing you with what it is that you can actually see. This would obviously come into play as a key element to PvP interactions in the game and would absolutely be used as a tactical advantage by players that are used to the MOBA gaming scene. The combat itself actually felt pretty responsive. Positioning my character didn't have any delays, the inputs worked the way that I wanted them to, and I was able to combo abilities without any jitters or frame drops or weird lag. I was actually looking for moments of lag or stuttering, and as of now, I haven't found one. Maybe there will be later. It's probably due to the servers not really being at capacity, but at least there is some good performance where it is now. It could be worse later, I don't know. At the moment, the servers in the netcode felt incredibly stable and very playable. I played on the one server that was located in NA, which was in Iowa, and I'm in New York, and it felt great at a ping of about 60. Gameplay loop-wise, this feels akin to an old-school EverQuest style of grind, though. There's no map markers, no highlighted items or direction arrow hand-holding, just quest text. Someone tells you to go northwest and look for a cornfield and bring back 10 ears of corn. That's what you do. You start heading northwest and see if you can find a cornfield. Someone references another NPC that has an item they need you to grab from them, but you don't have that map marker yet. Well, it's time to explore the area some more until you finally meet them so you can ask them for the item for your original quest giver. Or there is always asking area chat, where people seem to be very helpful, and you can even share map markers in chat, which was kind of nice to see. You could just click on it and it would show up on your map. At the very beginning even, someone will tell you to head north to find their brother. Main story quest. All you have to go on is that they're north, and that the original quest giver is a big goblin-looking guy. So all you can do is head north until you find someone that kind of resembles a goblin, assuming that a goblin would be his brother, and then another goblin-looking dude ends up admitting, in fact, that he is. And that's the main story quest, not even a side quest. If you are used to something like World of Warcraft's handholding, you are going to find this game's questing system to be a bit jarring. It's frustrating. You can't just zoom through the quest text. You actually have to pay attention to what they're saying and where to go. And then you end up going back in your notes and referencing that stuff in-game later. But from an immersive standpoint, all of the side quests and main quests are all voice acted. Voice acted really well, actually. Which brings me to the next thing that I noticed, actually. This game is definitely aimed more toward an adult audience. There's a guy at the very beginning of the game that gives a quest to go and find a locket so that he can give it to a girl so he can get laid. He quite literally says he's doing it to get laid. There's an NPC whose introductory voice line when you click on her to talk to her for the very first time is that she can put one of her legs behind her ear for a small fee.
I can put one foot behind my ear for a small fee. Namaste, bitches.
She also ends up saying namaste bitches, which I thought was great. It definitely ends up ticking all the thematic stuff about being a punk style of games checkboxes. However, the early game does move very slowly compared to many games in the MMO category. Remember how I said I made it to level 9? Well, I played for about 40 hours before I wrote this review, and I only made it to level 9 trying to hunt and peck and search for things that I needed. For instance, I needed leather. Well, leather doesn't just drop. It's not something that just drops off of an enemy. And there isn't an overt system marking how you obtain it. You end up meeting a butcher just by happenstance, who ends up having a crafting station at his house, where if you look at the crafting station, it shows that leather is something that you can make, which you then make from pelts, but it doesn't tell you where the pelts are from. So you end up getting them off of wolves just by happenstance, by killing wolves, which you then bring back and then turn into leather strips that you need in order to craft a grenade launcher that another NPC ended up giving me for a quest that they sent me out on 4 levels ago. Of course, wolves tend to travel in packs, which means that then I ended up fighting 2 or 3 of them at a time, which means I got my butt kicked a lot, and I won't be beating them at level 4. I ended up having to fight them at like level 7 because they hurt real bad. This game's built a little different. Levels don't mean a whole heck of a lot, so you end up having to focus on other things and then revisit those tasks later. Some people, I think, would actually appreciate the old school RPG feel that Corepunk provides. I myself am split. I do actually appreciate the slow burn of an MMO like this one, but at the same time, I've now spent 4 days in roughly the same geographic area doing what I refer to as gopher tasks. Go for this, go for that. And most of the progression loop at this stage of the game feels a bit tedious to the material generation from the tier 1 resource nodes like logging and mining and gathering. They are very slow. Seriously, it would probably take me like 2 hours of gathering just to get enough resources to make a tier 1 one-handed weapon. Basic weapon. At times, this kind of stuff felt like a real slog. However, that being said, I can absolutely see where powering through the slower early phase of the game and developing my shaman into a fully fleshed out, crit-focused double chain lightning nature mage would end up wreaking havoc on both PvE and players alike, and I look forward to really diving into this game once it goes into early access post-game wipe in a couple weeks, mainly because I want to see what the dungeon and PvP instances have to offer us for content. If it is anything like anywhere close to the preview videos that they've been teasing us with, this game will definitely end up being a long-term banger. This game gives some OSRS light grinding vibes, and I don't mind.